Welcome to the Fuck the Stigma podcast, Xodiak. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing really well. I woke up early, ate a good breakfast. I'm ready to go.
Fuck yeah. So I brought on Xodiak today to talk about a handful of topics. Things that I even want to be informed about. You have a nonprofit that you work with or you co-founded. It's called QueerX.
Yes. So I co-founded an organization. We're not a 501c3 yet, but we work heavily with the community. We started around the George Floyd movement when we realized there wasn't a Black trans space, and Nina Pop had literally died right around the same time. And so when we were trying to bring her death or even Breonna Taylor's death to the forefront, there was a response that was inconsiderate to the cause. And so when we talk about all Black lives mattering, we really do mean as well as the trans people. And so we got started around Black August of 2020. We got heavily into how to make every single movement inclusive of all spaces.
And you had also shared one of like your first reels on your on the page for QueerX was about your story with getting HIV.
Yeah.
And there's a big stigma surrounding that. And there's also a big stigma surrounding the whole Black Lives Matter movement. Mm-hmm. First, tell me what even HIV is and inform me on that whole thing.
So human immunodeficiency virus is something that attacks the body and attacks your white blood cells.
How does it affect the human body?
It can attack your health. It can affect your sleeping schedules. It can affect your eating. I know for me, I have an eating disorder. And so it actually made my eating disorder much worse. There was certain food that was no longer tasty to me.
Even the taste buds.
Yeah, everything was affected. And I started looking a lot more emaciated because of not taking meds my first year of HIV.
Why didn't you take meds your first year?
So I actually was heavily suicidal my first year. And I know your podcast also talks about addiction a lot.
Yes.
I was heavily addicted to meth and was sex avoidant because of my slaw relationship to my addiction and
sex and love
addiction. Yes. Yeah. I was trying to actually kill myself in my first year. It was 2019, from 2018 to 2019. I was emaciated and was at 85 pounds, fully AIDS ridden. And my friend actually got me out to treatment and got me on meds. But I was ready to die. I had so much internalized stigma that I didn't even know how to deal with at the time.
Internalized stigma with HIV?
Yeah.
And then explain to me because you said you mentioned AIDS,
yes,
and then HIV.
Yeah.
What is the correlation between the two?
HIV is the first step for most people. Sometimes people can get AIDS first. It depends on who you're inseminated by, but AIDS is. We used to believe it was a huge death sentence, and
yes,
and it still can be. There's still people that die from AIDS from not taking care of themselves, and AIDS is a mutated version of HIV. It attacks everything in your body and is there to actually kill you.
And what was the stigma that you had associated around AIDS and HIV?
When I was growing up as a kid, my mom knew about my gender identity issues, and I at the time didn't know what two-spirit was because I grew up in a very colonized household. And so for me, I identified as genderqueer, and my mom told me to stop picking a side, and you can either be a woman or be a gay male, but just don't get HIV. And so I always thought that because I was both feminine and masculine identifying, I was going to get this terrible disease that my mom had all this stigma from growing up in the 80s and 90s. And so when I had eventually called her after receiving the terrible news, she told me, like, the phone conversation, sorry, I get emotional thinking about it, but when I was talking to her, I called her and I said, "Hey mom, I have some really precious and hard news to tell you, so I need you to be there as my mother." And immediately she said, "You got it, right?" And I said, "What do you mean? Like, how do you know? Like, what are you talking about?" She said, "You know you're gonna die, right?" And then she hung up the phone. And at that moment, I immediately started thinking the worst things about myself, and I didn't know how to properly adjust where my feelings were in the situation. And so that's what started the whole hardest year of my meth binge. And I've been doing meth since I was 13 and doing meth in ways that people can't even imagine. And I just really wanted to kill myself.
I feel like meth is really prominent in the gay community, and especially when you go to your mom, somebody that you wanted there to just listen to you and just be there, like emotional support. Like, this is the one person I just really want to talk to about this news that I already feel like shit about. And then in a way, her making you feel a little bit worse about it was probably really hard.
Yeah, definitely.
And then how did you kind of start coming out of that? You said you went on a year-long meth binge. What was the process of like, okay, let's do
like
something.
readjust. Yeah, I was saved by one of my best friends who I owe my life to. And funny story, because I talked about slaw, I have a sex and love addiction, and she got me, she brought this boy into our house who was also going to seek recovery at the time. And I looked bad, so I don't even know why he was attracted to me at the time. And so he was like, yeah, let's get recovery. And I didn't know at the time that my friend had like fully brought this man into the situation, so that way I was attracted to the idea of recovery. But she told me later that was basically all the plan. Like, she just wanted me to get recovery. And so I was like, well, I heard recovery is great in California.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Austin.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I grew up in San Antonio, but I moved to Austin around the ages of 13, 16. Back and forth, and then I lived there continuously when I was 20 and on, and then I moved out here at 21. But I was so heavily seeking this self-identity that I was creating for myself.
I feel like that's all we want, is to really feel ourselves and know who we are.
Yeah.
'Cause that was my biggest thing. I didn't know who the fuck I was until I got sober. Really, and I mean, I'm still on that process and that journey.
Preach.
But it took me a while, even like when it came to like sexuality and stuff like that. It was hard for me.
Right.
And you just want to put a label on everything as well.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, still learning about herself. I'm sure you are as well.
Oh, every day I have this amazing partner that teaches me new things about myself every day, and I get to learn through my community how to properly teach people how to be safe and respectful in the queer community. And I get told by my queer community when I'm doing wrong, and I get to adjust my behaviors so that way I can be better for them.
It's cool that you get to kind of be the spokesperson for it after like the certain things you've gone through. But how did you end up getting the HIV?
Yeah, so I was involved in sex trafficking from the ages of 14 to 16, and then from the ages of 17 to 20, which is why I was back and forth between Austin and sex trafficking.
I'm kind of curious, how did that start?
My first experience getting involved in sex trafficking, I was going to my school, which was an art school, and I got picked up there, and I thought that I was supposed to be going home that day because I had kind of talked to my teachers, and I said that I wasn't feeling safe that day. I think it was some kind of stomach bug, or I was probably getting too stoned at school or something. I asked kind of just to have some time to myself that day, and the kind of white van situation that people hear about. Somebody said they knew my parents, and my mom works for the government, so when I saw an unmarked vehicle, I thought, government vehicle, like that makes sense. And I went missing for a couple of days, and this was while I was unhoused with my mom. And so I thought it was there for like an apology. And when I went missing, I got raped a bunch of times, and that wasn't by an organization. So the organization sex trafficking versus gang sex trafficking, they're two very separate things. Gang sex trafficking can imply that there is prostitution involved, or that there is some sense of gang affiliation. Whereas organization sex trafficking, it's usually by city officials, and it's by cops and other things, people that are heavy in the community, people that are higher ups. And my first time around, it wasn't like that, but my second time definitely was. And when I got sex trafficked the second time, they already knew me. So what
you said this was gang related?
The first time, yeah.
The first time.
But when I got sold the second time, I think that what happened was I was a commodity because I was a queer person. And so they moved my name over to this organization. and it became organizational sex trafficking or organized sex trafficking. I really didn't have much say. They like made sure I went to school so that way which was a very rare experience, but they made sure I went to school so that way because my mom worked for the government, so they didn't want anything
look off.
Anything off, yeah. They wanted all their pictures to look perfect, and
you
so
felt as you couldn't say anything.
I didn't know,
and you were young.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was wrong or not. I thought that eventually I would see a payout. I just went with it, and again, talking about young and impressionable earlier before the podcast, but I was very young and impressionable. You could have told me anything and I would have believed it. I was so gullible. The fact that they said that like my mom knew and like to keep it quiet, like I believed them. I was like, okay, well, how do I adjust this situation so that way I can be free? And
that's what we do as kids. We're innocent and we don't know, like, we look up to those older than us. Yeah. Like, they know best. Yeah. They're here to teach me. So, I understand kind of where your head was at a little bit.
Yeah. It was a very unique and traumatized experience, but I think it made me a lot more of a loving person. I don't think if I had experienced another life, like, I would be doing what I'm doing right now. So I was getting older in sex trafficking, and my body was getting used up. And so I, on Halloween, which is coming up, in 2018, was walking home with my Black trans friend, and we were both involved in trafficking. And that's the thing when you talk about when we were talking about young impressionable, I had friends in this. And so I was like, well, I got to stay in because my friends are here, like, you know. And she was 19 and I was 20. And I walked home with her. We were stopped at this bridge, and 2 cops came up, and it didn't matter their race, it didn't matter their color. Like, they stopped me and my trans friend, and they said, like, what do you have in your pockets? And usually, like, because we've been in it longer, like, they give us the money to give to them. And so, like, again, like, that's why I was expecting a payout. So they took all our money, and they started sexually assaulting us. And when everything was over, I was left there kind of bruised and bloody, and my friend was taken away, and I was left in the holding cell that night. And when my friend came to rescue me to get me out, one of my other friends, it happened on November 18th. She called me, my friend, and she said, you need to get tested. Like, this is, like, they test you in jail. And so she said, like, you need to get tested, like, something's not right, like, I think I have H.A.B. And so when I went and got tested, they said, not only did I have H.A.B., but I had syphilis too. And so I had to get one of those penicillin shots. So in the same day of getting H.I.V., the worst pain ever, I had that terrible penicillin shot at my ass, and it hurt like crazy. So all I was thinking about was the pain in my ass, and like the pain in my butt, and like the pain that I had suffered from the experience. And
the physical, the emotional, the mental.
Yeah.
And then everything. Like overall losing faith in absolutely everything.
I used to have a sense of security when I saw the legal system, but
after this it was fucked.
It was fucked. It was genuinely like, I didn't believe anything about the legal system. I thought that I had an identity issue where I believed that I was put here just to be fucked with. And this is before I got my indigenous name, Xodiak. So I was dealing with a lot of identity issues, not knowing who I was. And so I just thought that, like, people were just out to get me, that addict mindset.
Has your perspective changed from that now, from where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that I've been put here to help people and, use my experience to change people's lives.
I feel like that's what we can kind of do. That's kind of what I like to do here with Fuck the Stigma, is sharing that experience and how to come out the other end of it.
Hell yeah.
But people do live long, happy lives with HIV, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 5 years in, and I've never felt better. I just, after the arrest experience, which we can get into that soon, I got AIDS for a second time.
You can get it again?
Yeah. Yes. Again, this goes into the line of not trusting cops. I told them I had HIV and I needed to take meds the whole time I was there. and
In
they
jail.
only gave me 2 doses and in separate formats. And our body is like a Jenga wall. So like when you take out certain pieces, it makes you weaker. And you can stop taking out pieces by stop taking, for HAB, you can stop taking your meds altogether. And it can pause the process. And this is not true for everybody, but I had a really healthy body. So I just stopped altogether. In 2022 to 2023, I was really depressed because of the movement. And I became sexual avoidant again.
Yeah.
But I wasn't taking my meds and stopping them. So I was just off of them. And when I got arrested in 2023, they gave me 2 doses and they started my AIDS again.
And tell me about a little bit about the arrest experience that you had recently.
So it happened on June 3rd, but it was in relations to a situation that happened in April. And I was guarding a West Hollywood library where a drag time story hour was taking place. And
tell me a little bit about what a drag time story hour is,
absolutely.
For those that don't know.
Yeah, so drag time story hour, I'll explain the one that I went to, which was really great. Miss Pickles was her name, and I know it's funny, like little pun, but Miss Pickles was there, and she was reading books that the kids picked out from the library, and she read them, and then she sang a little nursery rhyme about like what drag queens are. And
what were the books in relation to, like drag queens, or
all
just
sorts of things,
like different things?
Yeah, different things. Like one of the kids picked out Clifford.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really friendly, like kid stuff.
Yeah.
I think that there's technically a common misconception that drag time story hours are indoctrination, but usually the kids come with their own books to present to the drag queens, and so it becomes a very beautiful space where the kids get to learn from somebody who literally looks like a model and literally looks like an icon, and they've never seen a princess in real life. So like seeing somebody who's literally a queen, like that's insane to them.
Yeah. And so what were you doing there?
Yes, absolutely. So I was there guarding, protecting, because that day there was a fascist report put out that people were going to go and shut it down.
Wait, what makes it drag time, like story hour? Like what makes it
Just the drag queen being there.
the drag queen being there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because, you know, they have like princess story hours, or they have like superhero story hours. They have different stuff. And so just the drag queen being there, that's what causes this like crazy emotion between people.
What is the purpose of a drag queen being there?
So a lot of families have queer kids that are learning themselves, or, you know, even queer parents. And the kids want to get to know the queer lifestyle a little more and understand where either their family is or where their little queer hearts are.
You know, like we're always exposed to straight couples and like straight love stories, like man and woman. And that's cute and all. You know what I mean? We love that. But I feel like it should almost, like, why not also have gay relationships like be portrayed as like a normal relationship?
Yeah.
I understand that, like, oh, maybe you don't want your kid seeing like things being sexualized.
Yeah.
And that's where I can kind of see the perspective of like, why are you dancing like that in front of children? But I think gay representation in like movies and in like maybe PG-13 things, or even maybe even PG things, like if like a 10-year-old kid having a crush on another 10-year-old like boy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's not so out of pocket to me.
Right.
Because it would have made me maybe a little bit more comfortable to maybe come out when I was in high school.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But I am slightly concerned about why drag queens would be dancing in front of children, and it's normally portrayed in a sexual manner.
Right.
And that's when I can see like, are they being groomed to kind of be pushed into homosexuality? And there's also another thing. This is kind of related, unrelated, of like kids, minors can vary from like 5 to like 15 years old, of them being born a girl and then wanting to transition to being a male. And it's valid for them to feel that way, and it's cool if they want to wear boys' clothes, get a boy's haircut, like a boy's, boy things. But is it okay for them to start transitioning, hormone blockers, getting put on testosterone, and like starting to get like top surgery and things like that. Like what's kind of your take on that?
So fun fact, you brought up hormone blockers. I actually was on puberty blockers at the ages from 10 to 13, and as you can tell, my arm hair is very hairy. I am culturally Mexican, period. Yeah, I'm culturally Mexican. So the arm hair was going to come regardless. I was just pausing something in myself because again, my mom said, you were on the fence. You need to pick a side. So this was something that she was willing to do so that way I could maybe better make a decision. And
that's hormone blockers don't harm.
No, don't do anything. And
besides just like pause puberty.
Actually, a lot of straight guys do it too because the puberty process is really painful. It's fun fact. I mean, we could call it HRT for everyone because, you know, you talk about steroids, you talk about, you know, there is always a sense of wanting to become your truest version of yourself. And that is gender affirming care, you know?
Yes.
There was this woman that said on a TikTok once, but she said she would get stoned for somebody saying that being on HRT is gender affirming care. But honestly, like the reality of the situation is that is the most gender affirming thing you can do, you know, to make yourself more masculine, or even in the sense of if you're having a hormone imbalance with a female where they have too much testosterone, or somebody who's assigned female at birth, to take estrogen or progesterone even is gender affirming. It's one of the most gender affirming things you can do. For me, I know from when I have to speak in school boards and educating people on like what we're actually doing and what we're actually allowing kids to do. We're allowing kids to exist inside themselves for just 5 seconds, and not to force that indoctrination, the true indoctrination of like that homophobia or heteronormative lifestyle that we push on kids from a very early age. And when you talk about like drag queens dancing, it's never gyration in the drag time story hours. Now, do they gyrate inside a gay club? Absolutely. There's adults there. When I was there watching Miss Pickles, she would literally pick up like her skirt in like a curtsy format and like twirl around for the kids. She did like a wiggle. It was very like childlike, fun, joy, freedom, kind of attributes for the kids to acknowledge that they were, you know, kids.
But not every drag time story time. What is it called?
Drag time story hour, yeah.
Drag time story hour is like that, not everyone.
Not from my knowledge. From what I've witnessed on social media and stuff, there is usually false reports on what's actually happening there, because even if you're to say those women are, or those drag queens are wearing sexualized clothing, it's always covered with a skin suit or something like even like this, like a mesh where it's covering the whole body. And when they dance, it's very free. So there have been kids that are allowed to go to drag brunches, but drag brunches are a completely different story. So when you see those videos of like kids voguing with drag queens, it's not a drag time story hour. There's this girl named, not Riley Prodigy, she's a part of the Ali Mark Jacobs. And Ali Mark Jacobs is a part of a Vogue ballroom house, and she's only 14. You could say that that's a very young age for doing that, but ballroom history has a huge history of accepting kids who want to be their true identity and their true self. And Ali Mark Jacobs is a trans woman who has been videotaped, and actually her videos have been used of her dancing with drag queens at drag brunches. But Ali Mark Jacobs is completely aware of her stature and what she's doing, and she's even spoken out about how she's never felt sexualized as a child inside the drag community.
But what do you think the purpose of introducing kids to drag queens is to kind of maybe allow some people to be more in touch with the LGBT community?
Yeah, it's not necessarily about getting them in touch with their true self, because they're going to be their true self regardless.
Yeah.
It's really to open up the idea that the queer community is not a scary place.
The opposing side to that would be why would you impression my kids in a way of even like introducing them to the LGBT community, or this like kind of femininity or whatever it is.
I mean, you could say the same thing for putting babies in he's going to be a female killer or whatever, or putting little girls in cotillion pageants from ages, and cotillion is the idea of ushering your kid off to have sex with another boy. Like, it's like the indoctrination goes far on the other side. So when we talk about this, opening kids up to learn or just experience something that already exists, it's not as if we're pushing it on them. It's as if we're allowing them to know what's already there.
And then what's your take on kids starting to transition before they're like of legal age of consent?
I think that as long as there isn't hormones involved until they're like 18, or even, we could talk about 17, in other countries, certain people are considered adults before they're 18.
Yeah.
I think that as long as there's, comfortability inside the kid's life, the parent's life, and also, the friends around them, if they're growing up in an accepting, healthy community, I don't see why transitioning. I think that hormones they don't change your brain mindset. They change your body mindset.
You don't think testosterone has an effect on our brain chemistry?
Absolutely. But that's what I'm saying is it's not something that I think. I don't personally believe that kids should be taking that.
Yeah.
Because that's just like sports players, which exactly. We saw a bunch of kids at the beach the other day, and I was like, I think they're on SARMs, and he was like, my boyfriend was like, I don't know, like they just look like they probably are buff, and I was like, no, they're beefed, like they're fucking huge. And so I don't think that kids should be on SARMs either. I don't think that straight boys should be on SARMs either. That hormone regulation thing is something that you need to make as an adult, and not something that you're manipulating the system into taking at an earlier age.
It's very normal for a kid to even want to express more. Mm-hmm. For example, a woman or like a female want to express more masculinity. It doesn't mean that they have to all of a sudden start identifying as a he. But sometimes, because kids are impressionable, they feel like they have to fit into a box, and they're like, yeah, I want to transition, and then end up changing their mind years later.
Yeah.
So that's why I also feel like it's important to not make any rash decisions.
Absolutely.
That's why I can kind of see some people's point on like, no, don't tell my kids that, but there has to be a line.
Well, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
The kids have to say it for themselves, I think.
Yes, and then, but also...
Kids are impressionable.
Yes.
Yes. I definitely agree.
So you mentioned you were genderqueer.
Yeah.
What is that experience like? What even is that?
So actually, I identify as two-spirit, but genderqueer was created as a word in 2015.
It was a created word in 2015?
Yeah. It was a fully recognized identity around the age of, I think I was 16 at the time. Mm-hmm. I acknowledged my experience as something that was gender diverse, and I didn't know exactly I didn't feel non-binary, I didn't feel gender fluid, and I didn't feel like a gender. I felt that I was something that combined everything together. And so genderqueer is gender unique. I could break down the colonization of creation of non-binaryisms and
I'm intrigued. I don't know the first thing.
So two-spirit and other genders have existed for long periods of time in the indigenous community, way before we've even been understood where gender is in the white or colonized communities. We have India, who has like 5 genders. We have the Mayan culture, who actually had two-spirit gods and believed that the people that were two-spirit in that culture were gods. And I'm Mayan. We had people in the Okanakswa tribe who literally had a story about a tree birthing a child of both identities. And at the time, we didn't know what intersex was.
So this goes back.
It goes really back, yeah.
Okay.
There are legends of gender diverse things. And because I was raised with my mother, as you can tell, she sounds interesting to say the least. I didn't understand how indigenous I actually was until I got my face measured and my hair and everything, and people like a tribe actually like adjusted and saw where I lied in the communities. And you know, this person very clearly said, like, you have Mayan features, and you seem like you might have Aztec features, but don't ever get a blood test, because, or like, don't ever spit into the tube and do a 23andMe test, because that's how they find us. And with all the indigenous hate that goes on around the country, it's not necessarily considered smart to find out exactly where your cultures lie, and so you should trust other tribes to tell you exactly who you are.
Okay.
And so when I found out I was Mayan, I realized my gender identity wasn't so about a colonized experience, something that was just created in 2015. It was something that existed for centuries. And, you know, a part of my gender story, when I was 4, I actually dressed up as a Christmas tree, like as a tree. I wore the skirt, I wore heels, I had like the angel head and everything. And my mom had an argument with me about whether I was going to be able to go to church like that. And my grandma was like, why not? Like, do it. Yeah, I was like, go for it. Like,
it's a Christmas
they look
tree.
fabulous. And and so we went into church, and like I had to wear this like little skirt with it and everything, and it was a really beautiful experience, because I got to really be a part of my identity. From that point, I, at the age of 6, told my grandma I felt like a girl sometimes. And so sometimes being that key word, like, I didn't understand where my identity lied until I was told that, you know, I'm Mayan. And so Two-Spirit was something that I could identify in.
And this was before you even knew anything about, like, nobody had impressed upon you, like, oh, yeah, you could feel like this gender and that one.
No, I grew up in a hella colonized household.
Yeah, so meaning what?
Like it was very white. It was
Yeah, so you already like felt that instinctually. Like nobody was telling you anything.
It was really cool. I really am blessed with my adoption experience, because I think if I had grown up in my culture, I might have been completely on the other side, and I might have taken machismo into my identity, and I might not have been the person I am today. And so
100%. You were adopted? Mm-hmm. Yeah, your life could have
been completely different.
Yeah, completely different. So many different things could have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, with the arrest that happened earlier this year.
Yeah.
You mentioned like cops involved, and you didn't feel safe with the police anymore, and like law enforcement. Right. And what is that about? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a queer abolitionist,
and define abolition for me.
Abolition is actually.
We can wait. I can do it for you actually.
Yeah.
Okay, abolition being the act or an act of abolishing. Okay, let's look up abolishing. Abolishing is formally put an end to. So, do you want to formally put an end to the police?
Yeah, absolutely. Rock on. Yeah, absolutely. I think that what they do in the system is they literally, I mean, if you break down the LA, like Sheriff's Star, it's literally the sign that they used to kill slaves. And so it was the badge that they used to kill slaves. And it like the birthplace of cops was to kill and was to harm Black people and Black and trans people. And, you know, we live in a modern society where you would think that some of those things have changed. But if you look at the rates of arrest rates of these situations, it's always pinned to one Black and brown side or trans and queer side.
Like, you truly in your core believe like we'd be better off without cops.
There are so many other options, and actually I have literature which I should have brought today of numbers that you should call instead of the cops out here in LA, and they're more responsive and they'll help you better. And there are certain situations that I think that if there was actual retraining and actual like readjustment, half of the cops wouldn't stay.
Yeah.
It would be a completely different system that we'd be looking at. And the money that they are allotted to make these decisions are completely used for new helicopters and training classes for how to speed around with your helicopter to make it look like a pretty circle. And it's just like insignificant.
My personal opinion, I'm sure they're being funded, the police in general is being funded for a lot of bullshit. Like, I'm sure a lot of it is bullshit, and I think some of it might be a little beneficial. But there's a movement as well, isn't it? A.C.A.B.
Yes. Yeah. All cops are bastards.
All cops are bastards. So I'm assuming you agree.
Yeah. I actually am getting an A.C.A.B. tattoo eventually pretty soon here. So I think that if you're in the system, and this, I can break this down really easy. If you're in the system, you are a bad cop. No matter if you're doing a good thing, a good deed, you're bad at your job because you're not following the system. The system is there to harm people. So if you're bad at your job, you're a bad cop because you're doing these right things for humans. Like you're stopping traffic, or you're, aiding an unhoused person. You're a bad cop because you're not being a part of the system. If you're doing the right things, you're harming people on a daily basis. You're doing all these things to literally harm people and make the world literally a worse place. So all cops really are bastards, because whether you're doing your job and you're being a terrible human being, or you're not doing your job and you're trying to help the community, you're not doing your job, so you're a bastard.
I see your point. Like I really hear what you're saying. I honestly think in America we are kind of privileged compared to most places. Like
Absolutely.
There's a whole war going on the other side of the world right now. And I was thinking about this literally earlier this week of like, I always say like, oh, fuck America, I want to leave America, but we have it pretty kind of good.
Right.
Yes, bad things happen, but I feel like as a society we kind of work a little bit. It works. People aren't just getting slaughtered all the time. Yes, we have our shootings. Yes, people actually really do get murdered sometimes, but like overall, if you compare it to different places in the world, we're doing good. I'm sure there's another country out there doing it better. Yeah, guaranteed.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I kind of want to, like, I think there are some good cops. I think there's some cops that really mean well. They believe in this American dream of like, I love this country, and I love the land that we live on, and I just want to be here and serve. And they really mean well, and they have good morals. So I don't know if I believe that all cops are bastards, because some really just mean well and have a great heart and go by the rules. And you say maybe just because they go by the rules and the laws that they're bad cops, because they're not doing, maybe, for example, like following the exact guidelines of their job, but they're doing the right thing morally. I see your perspective, but I don't think that makes them a bad cop just because they mean well. You know what I mean?
I see the system is completely broken. So
yes, you're very black and white with it.
Yeah.
You're like, it's fucked. It's broken. It needs to go away.
Or okay, so I, politically speaking, am an abo mutualist. Which means that I believe, and this is a very harsh belief, and I've been an activist for years, so this is just something that I've also become kind of nihilistic to the belief that it would actually happen. But I believe that if we were to break the system down and we were to actually abolish everything, and I mean banking, I mean everything. We talk about everything that's funded across the countries that, you talked about the war, banks are funding Israel. Like, so if you talk about everything that is abolished in our American system, and we go back to mutualism, which is the indigenous belief that mutualistic communities can exist together. There was tribes that, yes, we had warring tribes, but that's normal. Like, unfortunately, war is normal. It's embedded in the bones of people, like, to fight. And so if you break down that system completely, abolish it, and you mutualize it from the ashes, it would become a new society that would be beautiful and would be completely connected to community. Could there be cops that existed there? I think it would be more more like in line of how security acts, not how cops act. And it would be more like anti-gun, and it would, and that's the thing is like, you know, as an abolitionist, I shot guns. I'm from Texas, absolutely, but I believe that it should be something that's protected, and it shouldn't be something that every single cop has a gun, you know. And you talked about them following the rules and being an American dream. You know, if we were to break down the American dream isn't here to help you or I. It's here to help the white man.
The economy, the businesses.
Yeah.
But everybody wants it.
Everybody wants it.
Everybody wants it. Everyone wants the house and the dog and the.
I'm dressed in high fashion right now. Like, I understand.
I mean, I think there is a lot of things that need to be changed.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I'm anti-gun or pro-gun either.
Yeah. I don't have a...
Yeah. Have you heard of... That sounds kind of like what you're talking about. FAFSA? No, that's for college. But you know what I'm talking about? Antifa.
So Antifa is not a recognized group. It's an ideology.
Really?
Yeah. So a lot of people believe that George Soros was aiding and paying the movement, but I've been an unpaid, unhoused activist for the past 4 years. I have helped the community in certain ways, but I've never made money from this. That's not how this system works. The only payout that I've ever received was when I didn't get bailed out of jail, and I had to stay there until too many people called Gascon, the DA of LA, to get me out of jail because there was so much shit happening, and they were literally scared of keeping me arrested, that I received that money that was going to be used for my bail money, and I was allowed to use it for housing funds. I was allowed to use it for literally just living expenses because I'd been an unhoused, unpaid activist for the past 4 years, and all that money came from the community. Autonomous communities truly work. I think that if anything, my arrest experience taught me, and I think taught a lot of people, that autonomizing can happen and autonomizing does work. So anti-fascism is an ideology of how to break down the fascist societies that we live in.
Wow.
You know, the stigma that we have around the world itself is that you have to follow things a certain way, and if you don't do it a certain way, that you're fucked.
Everybody, the whole issue with everything and everybody is that everybody wants to be right, and they want it to be their way. That's why wars start. We want it to be this way. You don't agree. Now we're gonna fight for it.
Yeah.
Violently.
Yeah.
The issue is as simple as that.
Yeah.
And also as complicated as that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of put out there in terms of awareness or stigma?
There's on HIV stigma, there's this huge belief in that queer community that, you know, if you're not clean, you don't want to fuck, and it happens all over Grindr, which is a dating app. And you see, you know, clean for clean, or I'm neg, please be the same, and negative neg, and then you see on those same profiles that they're taking PrEP, and why would you be taking PrEP if you're not a little accepting? And then just like the world that we live in, people want to protect themselves, but then they want to shun away certain communities, and protecting yourself is so key. Like right now, I'm working with my partner on getting them PrEP, so that way, you know, even though I'm undetectable, and undetectable truly does mean untransmittable, that we can both feel safe. Because say we were to open things up in the future and we wanted to, you know, adjust and live our lives, because honestly, I believe monogamy is kind of dead. And we were to, you know, enjoy ourselves in this, you know, identity space or this love space, we would both be protected enough to, you know, do those things.
With HIV and AIDS, it's a big stigma that it's a gay disease.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
And it's not like absolutely anybody can get it.
Anybody. I mean, it's crazy. I have friends who are in the straight community who have it, and I also have friends who are in the non-binary community who were born with it. And so
that's another thing, you can be born with it.
You can be born with it.
Yeah.
So it's like a virus does not discriminate. It will never discriminate. We talk about discriminatory phobias all around the spectrum. A virus will never do that. A virus will just attack. Yeah. It's there to survive. Its sole purpose is just to survive. So whoever it can survive in, that's who it's going to do.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing quite a few things to light today. I'm glad we got to touch on a lot.
Absolutely.
And yeah, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Of course.
Thank you.